This morning on BRN, are the wealthy less worried about old age? And joining me now is Dr. Katharina Fenz of the World Data Lab. Dr. Fenz, great to see you. Thanks for joining us on the program this morning.
Thank you so much for having me.
Look, as a average American, I know that I worry about old age, and in particular, some of the costs associated to old age. But you undertook a very interesting study. And let me ask you, are the wealthy among us, whether it's here in the States or in Europe or across the world, are they less worried about old age?
So that's a very good question. And I also found it very interesting to look into this. And actually, in general, the wealthy are less worried about their financial situation at old age. But still, we can see that many who are wealthy, or at least many people in wealthy countries, are still worried. So it's not a one-to-one relationship, although there is some kind of trend visible.
So I guess having more wealth and more income, I guess in some way translates to some not satisfaction, but security in the minds of those that have it.
Absolutely. So it definitely plays a big role in how people perceive their security and especially also their potential situation later on and their financial situation when they're in older ages. But there's a lot of other factors that also come into play and that do seem to play a relevant role.
And what about when you look at countries? Like obviously I'm in the United States, you're in Austria. When you look at, for example, Europe or some of the other countries in the world, are there even greater differences between having money, not having money, and your feeling of financial security in old age?
Definitely, yeah. So we can see that the countries with the highest rates of insecurity for financial situation in old age are actually the poorest countries of the world. There's many African countries where poverty rates are high and people are really worried, or like 90% of the people are worried. And we can see a trend that on the other side of the spectrum, there's especially many European countries where levels of worriedness about old age are really low. We can see, for example, Denmark has really nice low levels. And the US, for example, is somewhere in between, although, of course, we have high levels of wealth. We do see still quite a significant proportion of the population being worried about their financial situation at old age. And there's even more extreme examples, for example, Japan, where also people tend to be quite wealthy, but still a majority of the population is still worried about their situation, their financial situation in old age. So it's a very interesting these differences across countries.
And does the difference between countries matter, or does the type of retirement system matter? For example, I believe in Japan, they have a pension system, what we would call a traditional pension system. Whereas here in the US and maybe some other parts of the world, we have a defined contribution system where we're all responsible in some way, shape, or form for a portion of our retirement. Does that factor into whether or not you feel secure about retirement in old age?
Yeah, that definitely seems to play a role, and we see that oftentimes countries, especially the wealthier countries, that also have a good system for pensions, healthcare systems, and things like that. They do seem to have lower rates of people being worried. But at the same time, there's also other things that come into play, like, for example, cultural attitudes, which might play a role in Japan, for example. I think also things like the inequality in a country. So not just whether there's a lot of rich people, but also like whether there's maybe also poor people and there's split in the population. And also things I think like the economic outlook, not just the current situation, but also what people might expect about their future, about where their country might be going. If this outlook is more positive, I think they also tend to be a bit less worried about their situation later on.
And doctor, where does longevity? I think even in some of the poorest countries, Africa, for example, though they may not live as long, there are healthcare. We've gotten better with our healthcare. We're living longer. I think it's relative depending on what country you live in. But does that play a role? If you're able to live longer here in the States, maybe where you are, the UK, other parts of Europe, there's access to better healthcare, you're going to live longer. Does that create a greater sense of worry? Like, hey, I'm going to need a little bit more money. I don't feel so good?
That's a very good question, because I think there's effects going into different direction here. Because on the one side, if you have that good healthcare system and you can expect to live longer, there's more reason to think about your financial security at an older age. But at the same time, we also see that countries that tend to have these good healthcare systems, good pension systems, good like social nets in general, are also countries where people tend to be less worried because of these systems. So for example, where you can expect that once you might get sick when you're older, there's a good system that will take care of you. There's also less of a reason to be worried about your financial situation then. So I think there's like effects going into different directions that come from the people getting older and having that healthcare system that allows that.
Doctor, I mean, I think when you look at the world population, I think by and large, every culture, we're getting older. It's getting older here, at least here in the States. I think in China, some areas. Are there things that we should be doing? When I say we, the United States, Europe, China should be doing to strengthen the opportunities for people and better prepare people for old age?
Definitely, yeah. So, I mean, when we think about what we can do to improve financial security at an older age, these social safety nets that I've mentioned before definitely play a role. I mean, this is something that governments can work on. But I think there's also other aspects, like, for example, promoting financial literacy, which is important in poor, but also in wealthy countries. There's also in wealthy countries people who just don't really know how to go about with their money, what they can do, how they can maybe save some money best, or how to invest, and things like that. I think can help with also making people feel more secure about their financial situation at an older age. And in addition, especially in poorer countries, also reducing the barriers to financial inclusion plays an important role. So for example, having something like mobile money that also gives poorer people some access to financial services can help make people feel a bit more safe about their financial situation.
Yeah, I mean, there are a lot of people here in the States that are unbanked, meaning they don't have bank accounts. Having access to a bank account creates a little bit more security for people. I can certainly see where digital and mobile access would bring a lot of security. You mentioned financial literacy, doctor. Here in the States, there's a big initiative in the United States for the states to offer financial literacy education. Is that the case around the world? For example, Japan, Europe, China, are they launching initiatives, or do they have initiatives to better improve financial literacy of their constituents?
I think there's big differences across countries. There's definitely some more countries that have initiatives like that, but I think these initiatives are also really still missing in some other countries. So I think that's still something definitely that internationally we could improve, and that more countries could put a focus on, I would say.
Yeah, it's certainly important. Well, doctor, thank you so much for joining us. Very important research. I guess it's nice to know that the United States is not alone in some of the concerns we have, but certainly room for improvement across the globe. Great to see you. Thanks for joining us, and we look forward to having you back on the program again very soon.
Thanks so much for having me.
And don't forget to subscribe to our daily newsletter, The Morning Pulse, for all the news in one place. Details, of course, at our website. And your subscription helps underwrite all the great BRN content. And we're back again tomorrow for another edition of BRN. Until then, I'm Jeff Snyder. Stay safe, keep on saving, and don't forget, roll with the changes.